Hello and thank you for joining me. I am Mbaya and this is Recap, a look at the week's top PC gaming announcements, news and releases for the week ending 19th of December 2015. A couple of years ago, a promising title known as Hardware was shown off. An RTS based around hunting for riches among a graveyard of derelict starships on a planet's surface, and was being made by former employees of Relic, who had a history of great real-time strategy games such as the Homeworld series, Company of Heroes and Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War. After Gearbox acquired the rights to Homeworld, a deal was struck between Gearbox and Hardware's developers BBI to turn the Homeworld-inspired RTS into the next game in the Homeworld franchise. As a result, we now have Homeworld Deserts of Kharak, a prequel to the events of the first Homeworld title that is due to release on the 20th of January. The game looks to be shaping up well, reminding many of the excellent ground control titles, while managing to retain the graphical style of the Homeworld games despite taking place planetside and not in space. And the game will feature online multiplayer and a single-player story campaign, though fans of the series are already picking apart the lore and direction comparing it to the tales found in Homeworld's original manual, so you can expect some minor inconsistencies at the very least, but likely not enough to spoil your time with the game. The game is available to pre-order now for £29.99 on Steam, and owners of the Homeworld Remastered Collection will receive a 20% discount, while those who don't yet own the Homeworld Remastered Collection will receive a copy for free, which usually retails for £26.99 by itself, essentially costing you less than £10 for each game, certainly better than the usual pre-order incentives. Crytek have revealed a standalone virtual reality mountaineering title named The Climb, which looks to be coming together nicely and has a great title icon to boot. While visually impressive from screenshots and videos alone, it's sure to take on a whole different life in VR as you chalk your hands to scale cliff faces, pulling yourself onto perilous ledges and jumping between rock faces, climbing ever higher. I'm hugely interested in VR and I've yet to see what I'd consider a system seller, but I'm eager to use the device for new experiences, and I think The Climb fits that category nicely, especially being an interactive experience rather than sticking a 360 camera on someone's helmet as they climb a mountain. I think Crytek are doing a good thing with the focus being on you and your interaction with the world, rather than it being something you do in a more action-based game, such as with enemies scurrying around. With a variety of environments and multiple paths and goals, I could see myself climbing for hours. Although, and this is quite important I guess, I'm scared of heights. I genuinely don't know how this will translate into a virtual reality environment, but if I can play and still keep my lunch down, it'll be an experience I couldn't really achieve elsewhere, and that's rather exciting. American Truck Simulator is due to release on the 3rd of February and builds upon the surprisingly successful Euro Truck Simulator, and while it releases with a couple of trucks and the state of California to drive around, there are plans to eventually include all of North America and as many trucks from different manufacturers as developers SCS software can license. I had heard great things about Euro Truck Simulator 2 and finally gave it a go and found it an incredibly rewarding experience. The environments were nicely presented, navigating the road systems was enjoyable, and I found myself constantly engaged with driving, making sure I wasn't drifting out of the lane and keeping an eye on nearby drivers. Ever since I was a youngster playing with toy cars, I've always been more fond of the larger American trucks than the smaller British and European lorries, however, and there is something about the American landscape and road systems that I find vastly more appealing than Europe. I guess it appears a bit more alien and varied to me for some reason. So I'm looking forward to climbing into my shiny polished rig and scraping by railings and other road users as I haphazardly explore California soon. The action role-playing game Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is finally due to arrive on PC on the 15th of January, complete with all previously released DLC and some additional visual enhancements. The game was praised for its exploration and interesting combat systems for melee, archery and magic, and will see you and 3 AI-controlled companions exploring a grim fantasy world while dispatching gigantic beasts and creatures. Don't expect a deep and rewarding story, however, as many critics mentioned it was uninteresting and even the game's lore was severely lacking, but the rewarding combat more than made up for the game's storytelling faults. The physics platformer Unravel, a game where you control a small being made of yarn as he jumps and swings through beautiful environments, has been given a release date of the 9th of February. Developers Coldwood hope to inspire players as they control Yarny on his quest to mend broken bonds, with his yarn representing the love and connection between people. There is a great amount of detail to the environments, and threats can seemingly come from off in the distance, and not just the playable plane, and that really seems to enhance the feeling of being so small in a large world. It's expected to cost around £15 and will hopefully have enough content and an enjoyable story that will make it worth picking up at launch. Originally planned to release in time for the holidays, Fable Legends developer Lionhead Studios have broke their silence to announce the open beta won't begin until spring 2016. The free-to-play cooperative RPG adventure game will pit 4 adventurers against a dungeon master controlling the battles and world, and takes place in an earlier period to previous Fable games, while still retaining much of the charm and art style. The extra development time is going to be put towards additional features and polish the developers think will make a real difference, and extending the testing phase means more time to ensure feedback from closed beta testers is taken into consideration, and the developers have stated they are proud of what they've created, but underestimated just how big of a game Fable Legends is becoming. The biggest battle may be yet to come, however. We've yet to learn just how the game will be monetized, and alienating players further, the game will only be available to Windows 10 users on PC. A disappointing admission I must confess to is that I've never played the System Shock games, as I discovered the original a bit too late and simply never got around to System Shock 2, despite it being something I'm quite sure I'll enjoy, but it's still sitting in my backlog collecting virtual dust, so this news will likely mean more to fans of the series than to me, I'm sure. System Shock 3 is officially in the early concept stages of development and is being made by Other Side Entertainment, which includes developers and the co-founder of Looking Glass Studios, the team that made the first 2 games in the series. Nothing is yet known about the third entry in the series, except that it will see the return of the voice actress responsible for Shodan, though it's a terribly long way off yet, but it's such a classic series that just the knowledge that it's being worked on will excite a great many gamers. A French consumer association are attempting to sue Valve due to some clauses in the Steam subscriber agreement that they consider illegal or abusive under European law. Most notably, the inability to resell digital goods, the lack of responsibility should personal data be compromised, Valve's ownership of any user-created content, and Valve claiming Luxembourg consumer laws regardless of the user's country. It all appears pretty sensible. Any company should abide by the laws and regulations of the country they operate in, but many people who are comfortable with using Steam and similar services are worried challenging the status quo could result in undesirable changes. One leading concern is that of ownership. While buying a game through Steam doesn't usually come with a DRM-free copy of the game, users do indeed feel like they own what they have purchased. A change Valve could decide to adopt, and I guess already has legally, if not in the minds of gamers, is one that MMOs took a while ago, in part to circumvent the sale of items within its game. That being, the content is the sole property of the game's developers, and users instead pay to access said content. Much in the way people pay for a ticket to see a movie and use the amenities of a theatre, without receiving a copy of said movie themselves. Change would be unlikely to alter the user experience, and indeed has been discussed before in regard to what would happen should Steam ever shut down, but it's a large shift in mentality for consumers to go from the feeling of ownership to rental, essentially. Of course, Valve could decide to allow users to resell digital goods, but it's again unclear as to how this would work. There needs to be incentive to buy new, in much the way physical goods have, where buying second-hand takes into consideration condition, availability and warranties, things digital goods don't really have to consider. Of course, unlike physical goods, the provider and developer could see a cut of any resales, much in the way the Steam market already works. It's all speculation at this stage and could bring about very little change to consumers, or quite possibly no change at all. A similar case has been brought against Valve twice in the past by a German consumer watchdog group, and the courts ruled in favour of Valve both times. The epic JRPG Final Fantasy VI has now made its way onto Steam via Airship and is available for £10.99, with an additional 10% saving until the 23rd of December. I got started with the series by playing Final Fantasy VII, so I've never experienced the tale of terror and lock. Although reactions of the port coming from mobiles are divisive, I'm happy I'll finally get to experience the game on PC. For longtime fans hoping to revisit a classic, be aware the translation is based on the Game Boy Advanced version and may differ from what you once knew. Likely not enough to alter the game substantially, but that coupled with a change to the sprites might make it a bit jarring to get used to. User reviews suggest the game could have received a better port, with one repeat issue being the resolution maxes out at 1368 by 768, which is a shame but certainly not unplayable for me. A nice change from the originals seems to be the inclusion of a hint system, giving players that get a bit lost a sense of direction should they wish to make progress without the assistance of a guide, something I'm likely to be making good use of. Previous players of the game might want to hold off on this unless you're desperate to relive the story, but I hope the quality of the game's storytelling and mechanics will still be a pleasure for those new to the game. Star Nomad 2 is a top-down space trading and combat game with a touch of RPG and squad management, and is available on Steam now for just under £10. The game is set in a dynamic open universe sandbox that will be familiar to those of you who have played the excellent Drox Operative. You're free to choose your own path, be it merchant, pirate or bounty hunter, as factions and their loyal followers go about their plans. Star Nomad 2 features real-time combat aided by a tactical pause, and clever enemies that utilise their ship's strengths, a dynamic trade system based on supply and demand, resource gathering, loot, and a series of random events to keep things interesting. I'm a big fan of games like this that seem to provide a great deal of depth but remain very accessible. For less than a tenner, it looks great. Underrail is an old-school isometric role-playing game very much inspired by the original Fallout games, that takes place in underground stations with a lot of emphasis on exploration and tactical turn-based combat. The remnants of humanity have retreated from the surface and formed a series of conflicting metro station states as each group struggles to survive in their harsh new home. The game also features a stealth system, character progression and crafting, but the focus is certainly on combat more than role-playing. Don't expect pacifist options for encounters in this one, you'll be using bullets rather than words this time around. Underrail is available now on Steam for just under £10. Turnover is a top-down stealth game where you control a worker for a corporation caught in the middle of a very hostile takeover by a rival firm, who must use cover, distractions and tools to slip by enemy operatives and successfully escape. The game would feel right at home on the SNES, with chunky visuals and punchy sound effects, but offers up a mature theme and punishing difficulty that likely won't appeal to those easily frustrated by trial and error and being sent back to the beginning of levels. Turnover is available now on Steam for £6.99, with a 25% saving until the 22nd of December. The classic Turok has been re-released for PC and is now available on Steam for £14.99, and has an additional 20% saving until the 24th of December. An update to the original Turok Dinosaur Hunter and not the 2008 remake. Turok might be a little old for many to enjoy, with maze-like levels and key collecting as you use up to 14 weapons while battling a variety of enemies, including bionically engineered dinosaurs, all in an attempt to stop the campaigner getting his hands on an ancient artifact known as the Chronoscepter and unleashing its power upon the universe. I do like that one of the selling points is still listed as having the ability to independently look and aim your weapons up, down or sideways. It feels good to remember just how far games have come in such a short time. The re-release has had a little work done to it, with support for higher resolutions and additional visual effects, and some effort has been made into tweaking enemy spawns and level design. The only thing I remember from my days playing Turok was spending over £60 on the original N64 cartridge, so I might give it a go for a nostalgia hit. It's certainly not a classic like Doom or Quake, and seems a little on the expensive side just now, but I might plonk it on my wishlist for future sales. Cards and Castles is a grid-based strategy and collectible card game where playing cards results in units appearing on a 5x9 grid that can then be used to engage the enemy. Previously a paid-for early access title, the game has now released and is free to play on Steam, so if you like your CCGs but want a bit of tactical movement thrown in, it won't cost you anything to have a look. The game features 5 factions and allows for multi-faction combo decks, and there's also a draft mode available if you fancy putting together a random deck rather than investing in your own. It's a nice and colourful game with an art style that somewhat reminds me of the Behemoth title, such as Castle Crashers and Battle Block Theatre. Card art appears to be better than the in-game units, but it goes well together. It's nice to see a CCG adding a layer of additional strategy to the game, and might be something to keep me occupied until Duelist makes its way onto Steam. I'm going to be a little cheeky and mention a game that I simply forgot to include last week, and that was Dirt Rally, which is available on Steam now for £32.99. It seems to be a return to form for Codemasters and a worthy successor to the classic Colin McRae Rally titles they once created, with a shift away from arcade gameplay to a solid simulation, with an improved handling model and a rebuilt physics simulation that even includes models for loose surfaces collecting under wheels. With 6 rallies over 70 stages, 39 cars, and even a bit of team management allowing you to hire crew members that can improve their skills, enabling faster repairing of damaged car parts, there is a fair bit of content on offer. It seems to have nailed the thrill of the rally experience well, with a good sense of speed and long unforgiving events, and genuinely appears to be a rewarding game, as you slowly improve your times and get to grips with your chosen vehicle. As mentioned just last week, Elite Dangerous Horizons is now available on Steam Early Access and direct from the developers for £39.99, and comes with an additional £10 saving for previous owners of Elite Dangerous. Horizons doesn't require the base game of Elite Dangerous to play, and even contains all of the content of the original release, so it's a good place to start for new players, though feels rather expensive as an upgrade path to those that already own the base game. Elite Dangerous Horizons is expected to be complete in the first quarter of 2016 and has plans to add loot and crafting, multi-crew ships, player avatar creation and ship-launched fighters. New to Horizons are planetary landings. Now you can explore the surface of simulated planets and moons via ship and the new Scarab land vehicle, discovering valuable resources, crash sites and enemy bases. Elite Dangerous is certainly both expansive and immersive, and looks like it will suit VR rather well, but after a fair few hours with the title I did find it rather repetitive and slow paced, though I appreciate there are many fans that like that side of the game, and those that want to escape to live a life among the stars, trading goods and exploring far off stars could still find a lot to like with this title, and I imagine I will return now and then to experience the new content on offer. Dead Star is a multiplayer top-down space combat shooter across procedurally generated battlefields that features 10 vs 10 battles with players that are attempting to gain control of outposts, mine ore and upgrade their defences. Developers Armature Studios are also trying a 10 vs 10 vs 5 game mode, where a group of 5 players will attempt to keep their capital ship safe as it warps between other people's 10 vs 10 games, providing a juicy target or distraction to the usual matchup. It's currently in early access for £14.99 with a 25% saving until the 22nd of December, but I have concerns about the player base. The game lacks and seemingly has no plans for any single player content, so will require a healthy player base. As a result, it appears to me the sort of game that could have actually benefited from some sort of free-to-play option to keep the game populated. So we'll have to wait and see how successful it is at launch. Goblins Grottos is a puzzle platformer about a goblin trying to escape a group of greedy adventurers after a paladin killed his entire family, and is available on Steam Early Access for just under £10 and is expected to be complete in 3 to 5 months. As you plan your revenge, you'll be making your way through trap-filled levels, evading and luring adventurers to their death with the promise of loot and experience. Currently featuring 2 of the proposed 4 environments planned for the game, and while the story isn't yet complete, a huge draw to the game is the level editor, allowing users to create and share content in-game, adding dialogue and even cutscenes to flesh out their stories. The game seems rather comedic, making fun of other fantasy games and MMO culture, and going by the trailer features some good voice work and excellent pixel art. There's still a lot of content to be added, but the promise of user-created levels could make it a title worth investing time into even at this stage. Squad is a tactical first-person shooter that is along the lines of a military simulation created by some of the people that worked on the Project Reality mod for Battlefield 2 and is available on Steam Early Access for £29.99. Currently featuring a focus on infantry combat and some basic base building, it's clearly early days yet. The finished game hopes to have 50 vs 50 player servers and a full complement of vehicles for each faction upon completion, planned for the end of 2016. Squad is likely a game for the hardcore crowd, where squad leaders utilise mics and you could be running for 10 minutes just to get shot by an enemy you can't see. It is sure to evolve into a rewarding and brutal experience over time if it hasn't already. Perhaps not one to buy just yet unless you really wish to support the developers, but worth keeping an eye on as it develops. That's all for this episode of Recap, which will be the last episode of the year as the holidays draw nearer. A reminder that the Steam sales are expected to start on the 22nd of December, so be sure to hold off on buying your gifts until then. I wanted to take a moment to thank friends old and new for their support and advice as I've experimented with this little podcast. It truly means a great deal to me. I hope everyone has a wonderful new year, and as always, thank you very much for your time, and farewell.